Welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on Cards Radio 790 WKRD in Louisville, Kentucky. So glad you're joining us today for the show that's about things going on at the University of Louisville, where we talk to professors, we talk to researchers, we talk to students, alumni, whoever's making news at the University of Louisville. So on the show today, 3D printing and advanced manufacturing are changing the way Americans build things, big things like cars and trucks. The head of Ford Motor Company's 3D printing operation was in Louisville recently, and we'll talk to him about how technology is changing at Louisville's Ford plants and what's being taught in engineering schools. And do you have a loved one you're worried about possibly killing themselves? There's a UofL workshop for families who want to learn about suicide risk, and we'll tell you about that, and also how you can help your own family members perhaps avoid the thoughts of suicide. But first, the University of Louisville has gotten a big grant aimed at getting more minority students college degrees in biomedical fields and health fields. Sham Kakar is a physiology professor who also works at the James Graham Brown Cancer Center, and he's heading up this grant and this program. Sham, good to see you again.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's start at the top. What do you do? What's your job at the University of Louisville?
My primary job is cancer research, so we do a lot of drug screening and drug discovery.
Okay.
At the same time, we help students to get training in their research program, graduate them, master student, as well as PhD level.
All right. So you just got a big grant. Tell us about this big grant and what it does. What you plan to do with all that money?
So basically this grant came up from my background because we always talk about helping underprivileged student, underrepresented student, as well as economically disadvantaged student to be successful in their career, to become a part of the high-level paying job, professional job.
What, in biomedical fields?
Biomedical field. But what we are doing for them? Absolutely not much.
For these students, you mean?
For the students from the underprivileged background. So I came up with this idea and started looking for a source which can help the student to fund them for their education, as well as to explore them to a biomedical profession so that they can be successful and become a high-paying job professional. So with that idea, so if we look JCTC, Jefferson Community College, their graduation rate is very, very low. The most of the students coming to JCTC are from underprivileged background, unrepresentative background, and economically disadvantaged background. So the reason their graduation rate is very low because they do two jobs and have families to feed and not really...
It's tough to go to school.
Tough to go to school and pay tuition.
Right.
So many of them quit and they never graduate. So with this program, the target is that we help these students to explore them or expose them to biomedical research, explain them, prepare them to go to the urban university so that they don't get left over, they don't feel left over, and we'll work with them and counsel them so that they are exposed to the urban environment, urban university environment. At the same time, we pay them so that they don't have to work low-paying job to pay the tuition.
So this grant is from who and for how much?
This grant is from NIH. It's a
National Institutes of Health.
National Institute of Health, and it's close to $900,000. Okay. Initially, it was around $1.8 million, but when it scored, the program director told me that your program is too large and you may not be successful in first round, so let's cut down to some extent, and when you come for renewal, you can jack it up.
All right, and so how many students going into JCTC are you targeting in the first year, and how are you recruiting these students? How are you deciding, Billy Smith over here is better than Bobby Sue Williams over here?
So there are around 400 students who enter into the science program, 2-year science program at JCTC. And their graduation rate is close to 15%, which is really very, very low.
Right.
And the selection procedure is that we will target the students who are willing to transfer to 4-year baccalaureate program to urban university, like University of Louisville. That will be our primary focus. But and we test the student. They have to apply by application, and we are in the process of recruiting the applicants right now. So we'll take the student who are coming from underprivileged and underrepresented area and they are eligible for Pell Grant. Of course, we have the requirement that their GPA should be more than 19, or ACT should be more than 19.
Okay. We're talking with Sham Kakar, who's a physiology professor at the University of Louisville, also works at the James Graham Brown Cancer Center. We're talking about a grant he got to help out students who are interested in biomedical and the health fields get through JCTC and then transfer to the University of Louisville, right? Isn't that the idea?
Yeah.
So they have to make a commitment to get that associate degree at JCTC, stick around for 2 years at JCTC.
Yes.
And then they would transfer to UofL to finish up their bachelor's
So
degree,
the
right?
first summer, it's a summer program basically, but we will be going to JCTC and inviting some speaker who can talk to them, make them excited to go to 4-year baccalaureate program. And in summer, 10 weeks of summer, we bring them to university, where in first year, they will be taking classroom lecture in career-oriented, how they can build up their confidence, how they can apply it to the biomedical sciences, and how they can be successful. So this will be not regular subject or physics, chemistry, and math courses. This will be something career-oriented, how to build your career, how to be successful, and so on. So they will be paid $5,000 for 10 weeks of summer. They will be at University of Louisville, and then they go back to JCTC for second year, and then they come back, and they will have exposure to research. So they will be assigned mentor in the area they are interested. That can vary from chemistry, biochemistry, cancer research, spinal cord injury, biomedical engineering, and so on. So we have mentor from every field. So based on the student interest, they can be assigned specific mentor.
So that's the link to the University of Louisville, isn't it?
That's correct.
That all of these students at JCTC that are involved in this grant program will be taking A, some classes at the University of Louisville, B, getting paid to work at the University of Louisville over the summer, and C, they'll also have a mentor or someone from the Brown, like you, from the Brown Cancer Center, or some researcher or something that will be working hand in hand with them while they're going through that 2-year program at JCTC, right?
And once they transfer to University of Louisville, we will have a counselor who will work very closely with them, help them in selection of the courses, and if they are struggling in any of the courses, we will provide them mentoring, and we'll may soften the courses. So before they go to the hard courses, they can take soft courses and feel happy and confident, so that they can be retained and can be successful. If we look the real story right now, what's happening at JCTC, graduation rate is less than 15%. So out of 15% who graduate in 2 years, it's not 2 years, it's 3 years, basically, even though program is for 2 years, but they graduate in 3 years, so 15% of them graduate. Out of 15% who graduate, only 30% go to the high-level university baccalaureate program. And the student who transferred to the 4-year baccalaureate program, only 30% graduate. So our target is to increase their graduation rate from JCTC at least to 50 to 70%, and the student who graduate then transfer to University of Louisville, our focus is to increase their transfer rate by 70%.
And make them successful and get them a Bachelor of Science degree at UofL.
Yeah. So instead of 30%, our focus is that 70% of the student who transfer to increase to 70%.
Right.
So that way we really will be adding up large number of students who are coming from this background to be successful in the professional colleges.
Again, we're talking to Sham Kakar, who's a physiology professor at the University of Louisville. And you said that your background was the reason you were interested in this. Did you come from a poor background?
Yes, I was born and raised in a very small town in India. My family was okay, but I have seen a lot of families struggling for their survival. And there were very bright and smart students in my class, but they could not make to college because their family could not afford. To make anybody successful is a contribution of many, many, many people. So I thought if I can contribute and make some people to be successful in their career will be greatest contribution from my side. So that in mind, which has been many years, so I came up that I need to do something for this population.
And for the students who do graduate, who do get through the 2-year program with your help at JCTC, then go on to do another 2 years at UofL and get their bachelor's degree, what kind of fields are you hoping they will enter? What kind of professions might they get out of this?
Well, they will be open to all profession, biomedical profession. For example, going to medical school, dental school, PhD program, master program, nursing, and engineering, and so on. So their field will be wide open. So they start whatever bachelor program they start. Based on that one, they can select any biomedical field.
And I should have gone back. The $5,000 that they're getting to work during this program during the summer at the University of Louisville, are they also getting any help with their tuition at JCTC or at UofL once they transfer to UofL?
Yes, not after they transfer, but during the time they are in JCTC, they will be offered courses at the university with the tuition what they pay at JCTC.
I gotcha.
So this
So
will
they get
be
the
a
cheaper
big
rate,
cheaper rate
right.
in taking high-level courses at University of Louisville. And we have designed one course in biology, and they will be taking that course paying the tuition at the level of JCTC.
And how many students are in the first cohort, first year, and then how many do you hope to do over the
So
next 2 or 3
in
years?
first year, we are recruiting 8 students, and these students will be carried for 2 years, so first year and the second year, and then we will add 8 in second year. So from second year, we will have 16 students from year 2 to 5. The first year will be 8 just to get their feet wet and our experience. So we want to see that they really are on their path, and then add 8 next year and keep on going.
All right. Well, Shyam, how do they, I guess I should ask you, how do folks who are watching this or parents who are watching this, how do they get a hold of you to say, hey, I'd like my kid to be in that program?
We have a website, which is on the university website, and also we have a website at the Department of Physiology.
So how should they search it, though? If an easy way to search it?
They can they can go for Bridges to Baccalaureate program, University of Louisville, UofL, Bridges to Baccalaureate program,
Okay.
and they can go to the right website.
Okay.
I should have brought and shown
That's
you.
okay. That's okay. So you can probably go to the UofL website, search
Yes.
Bridges, and you probably get there.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. All right, Shyam. Always good to see you, and good luck with the program and getting some of these students in the biomedical fields. Harold Sears is in town. Harold is with the Ford Motor Company. He is the technical leader for 3D printing at Ford Motor Company, and he is the keynote speaker for the Kentucky Nano and Advanced Manufacturing Symposium, which is going on at the University of Louisville, and has folks that are interested in advanced manufacturing and 3D printing from all over the country here in town, and Harold's going to be here to talk to him. So, Harold, first of all, welcome back to Louisville. You've been here before, right?
Yes, I have.
Just to see the 2 Ford plants, or did you come to the University of Louisville for a basketball game or
No,
something?
I actually came for some training here at the Advanced Manufacturing Center.
Okay, well, very good. Well, it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Hope you do well at the conference, at the symposium you're about to. What are you going to talk about at this symposium? You're I think they called you the grandfather or something like that of 3D printing. They got some name for you. So what are you going to talk about?
So I've been around this 3D printing world for a while at Ford since the early 90s. So I'm really going to kind of talk about how we're moving it from basically a technology that's been largely used to do prototypes into the future, into doing manufacturing aids and working in the plants and ultimately supplying parts that go on production sellable vehicles.
So that actually get on the street, bottom line.
Absolutely. Right. Yep. So it's been quite a progression of the technology.
How do you describe 3D printing? When I talk about 3D printing to folks, they don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So how do you describe it?
How do I describe it? It's
people
really
that don't understand what it is.
Yeah, I'll also refer to it as additive manufacturing. So it's really as opposed to what we're used to of subtractive manufacturing, where you would take a block and put it on a machine and start cutting metal away or plastic away. In this case, we're starting with nothing and we're growing it and we're adding it up layer by layer. So it's an exact replication of the CAD data and minimal waste on it, and generally can build much faster than it can conventionally.
Is most of the 3D printing that gets done now for small parts and, as you said, prototypes, is it mostly plastic? Or is it something else? Is there some other material, or can you 3D print out of anything?
It's amazing. It's not just plastic. I would say plastic is the predominant material, but we actually 3D print sand. For doing sand molds, for making sand castings, we 3D print in metals as well. And then there are various mixtures, so you get some hybrid materials, some composite materials, if you will, where it's a plastic and something else mixed with it.
We're talking with Harold Sears, who's the technical leader for 3D printing at Ford Motor Company. I assume you're based in Atlanta?
No, I'm not. I'm Dearborn area, Michigan.
Dearborn, okay.
Yep.
Well, it had to be either
Detroit
Michigan or
area.
Atlanta, one of the two, right?
Yep.
And so when you're talking about 3D printing, and you just talked about trying to get it from the prototype to now using it actually in cars and trucks and those kinds of things, where is Ford on that? And actually getting that stuff, I don't know, to make doors or mirrors or whatever you think you might be able to make with 3D printing models.
Yeah, so we have traditionally used it as a prototyping tool, as well as many other companies have for years and years, right? And probably ultimately we build well over 100,000 parts a year additively for prototyping use. We're transitioning now to start building tools that are used in our manufacturing plants to assist in the assembly of vehicles. And we also just recently released our first parts that are actually on production vehicles. So the Raptor pickup trucks that are exported to China have a 3D printed part on them, and then our newly released Shelby GT500 Mustang has 2 3D printed parts on that, so we're pretty excited about that.
Okay, and are we going to see them at the truck plant or in the Explorers or anything anytime soon?
We're working toward more applications right now. We've learned an amazing amount just with a couple of applications that I just mentioned. It's really a challenge to move from a traditional tool to a 3D printed machine and to prove out the viability of doing that, the consistency, repeatability of the parts coming out of the system. So we've started with simple parts, and we certainly have a roadmap to be more aggressive and get into more challenging geometry.
Talking with Harold Sears from Ford Motor Company about 3D printing. He's here at the University of Louisville as part of the Kentucky Nano and Advanced Manufacturing Symposium, which is going on over at the Speed Museum on our campus. And so looking to the future, let's talk 10, 15 years from now. Will we be seeing cars and trucks with the majority of parts 3D printed, or just a few, as you mentioned, 2 or 3 in each vehicle?
Well, that's a really good question, because one of the messages that is going around now is that in 10 to 15 years, the cars as we know them today are going to be significantly different, right? So how different will they be? I would say there's going to be a lot more 3D printed content in them, but I don't think it's going to be the majority of parts yet. Today's manufacturing processes are extremely efficient at what they do. Injection mold tools can pop out parts every few seconds or so, and 3D printing machines are within hours or minutes at best right now of printing parts, right? So I think it's going to be a progression of an identification of niche markets and markets where 3D printing fits best. So in lower volume vehicles or vehicles that require customizing and personalizing, then you will see a much higher content of 3D printed parts in those. The average lower and consumer type vehicle that's mass produced will by and large have much more standard produced type components in it, though.
And again, as we're looking in our crystal ball here, from an advanced manufacturing and an additive manufacturing standpoint, what do you see as the next big thing, not just in perhaps automotive, but in advanced manufacturing or additive manufacturing?
Well, in additive manufacturing, it's certainly progression of materials is very important in the auto industry. We really need materials that are much more automotive friendly and materials that do not break down with UV exposure to salts and solvents and those sorts of materials, right? So advances in the materials will come along, and then it's advances in the core technology and how does it become faster, more efficient, and then how do we integrate automation into that to help accelerate the technology along to build parts faster.
And from your standpoint, what is the role of engineering schools like we have here? We have the Speed Engineering School at the University of Louisville and other engineering schools in moving that forward and trying to help Ford come up with these parts that don't rust out as easily and don't break down as easily.
So it's certainly all around that material development, again, the automotive grade materials. Smart materials are becoming something that people are looking toward in the future now. So it's materials that can react to their environment and change. They may move based on temperatures, and maybe a temperature gets up to a certain point and a material senses and moves to close a valve and to open a valve or something like that, right? So it's really important there. Process automation, higher throughput on these 3D printing systems. It's really important. Many of the systems are based on lasers that are single point lasers. And how do we move from a single point laser to something that's more like a paintbrush that's 2 or 3 inches wide, right? And so we can cure a lot more material a lot faster. I think it's controlling and understanding the physics of these materials when they shrink, how they shrink, and the reactions when they're curing. So there's lots of opportunities in the whole research space to get around that and support it. And then from a pure like a mechanical engineering standpoint, as I mentioned, it's the automation and it's the mechanics of these systems, and how do you get them to be more efficient? How do you get them to be faster? How do we get them to work better with standard plant automation? So there's just tons of opportunities in this space. Software too. We didn't even really mention software. Right. A lot of opportunity around software to get involved.
So last question: the kids in the future that are looking at engineering or math sciences, the STEM fields, what would you tell them if you got a 15 or 14-year-old out there right now who's thinking, I might want to go into that kind of thing. I kind of like cars. They're kind of cool. Might like to, maybe go work for Ford someday, but I'm not really sure what I want to do. What do you tell them about 3D printing and what you're doing at Ford to look towards the future?
Well, I think 3D printing is going to change the way we not only build vehicles but design vehicles as well. And it's really the people that can come into the workforce with the experience around design for additive technologies, or the understanding of what these technologies can bring to the table, and also understanding what they can't bring to the table, is very important. Because today we have an aging workforce that we're trying to mold into these new technologies. And so folks that can come into this workforce with the ability to help train or to help apply these advanced techniques and teach others is going to be a very important thing.
All right. Harold Sears from Ford Motor Company, appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for coming to the University of Louisville. It seems every family at one time or another is faced with a loved one who could be suicidal. Laura Frey is an assistant professor at the Kent School of Social Work, and she's here to talk about those tough times that families face, and also a conference is coming up that maybe will help those of you who maybe have a family member and potentially is suicidal, and how to deal with them. Laura, good to see you again.
Happy to be here.
Glad you're here. All right, well, right off the top, let's talk about the conference that's coming up here in just a couple of days, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what families should look for. So go ahead and tell us about this conference.
Yeah, and I should clarify, it's not quite a conference. It's a training. Yes, it's a 3-day training for professionals. All of us mental health professionals are trained to do suicide risk assessments, but not everybody necessarily understands how do we help the family then support their loved one during that. So it's a 3-day training for professionals to understand how do we navigate some of those tough family conversations? How can we help them process if there's been a bad conversation that didn't go very well? So it's a 3-day training for professionals to give them those tools to help families.
Okay. And we've talked about this before on this program, but I want to go back over it because I think it really is important. Number one, this is Suicide Prevention Month in September, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's a focus on it. But every family, as I said in my introduction there, every family, it seems, at one point or another has somebody, an aunt, an uncle, brother, sister, somebody that, gets depressed or has some sort of something going on in their life that it may be thinking suicidal thoughts. How do we know that? How do you know if your family member has gotten to that point, or can't even know?
So you can. The first thing, really ask them. Ask them what's going on, how they're feeling. There's certainly warning signs that you can look for. So if somebody's starting to withdraw from loved ones or withdraw from activities that they used to enjoy, if you find that they're having less stable mood swings, so a lot of instability that seems unlike them, if they have increased in drug use and substance use and alcohol use, certainly if they're feeling a lot more depressed, a lot more decrease in appetite, or sometimes even on the opposite side, a big increase in appetite, or sleeping out of norm, or sleeping a lot less than norm. Those are all signs you can look for, but really if you're worried about somebody, the best way to know is to ask them and to say, hey, I'm worried about you. This is what I'm seeing. I'm wondering if you're having thoughts of suicide, or if not, what else is going on?
Do you just bluntly ask them?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's a myth that asking the question is going to put the idea in people's heads, and research has overwhelmingly shown that's not true. Really asking the question lets people know you're okay to talk about it. And for people that that aren't suicidal, it also gives them the opportunity to say, no, that's not what I was thinking. And that's why if you're nervous, you can also say, I saw this, this, and this, and that made me think something's going on. So you can let people know.
How much of a leap is it, though, from someone who says they may have just lost their job, lost a loved one, and they are really down in the dumps? They quit eating, not sleeping well, and you ask them, and they say, "Yeah, I'm really bummed out. My uncle died. I was very close to them. My job's not going well." How far of a leap is it between that and having suicidal thoughts? I mean, it seems like a pretty, to me, seems like a pretty big leap, but it may not be.
Well, and so it's never one reason why somebody feels suicidal. There's lots of factors that go into it. And two of the big things that we look for as a therapist would be to look at how much do they feel like they belong, that they feel like they have people that they feel close to, that they feel connected to. And so it could be that the loss of a loved one cuts that way back and they don't feel like they belong or that they have a place. Another aspect is the idea of, do they feel like a burden to others? We all have the need to contribute, the need to feel like we're doing some good in the world or serving an important role in our loved ones' lives. And if we start to feel like we're no good, we're not giving, we're causing people more pain than good, we start to feel like a burden, that's a big sign. So job loss would be another one that would really go around that. So really looking at all these factors and how all these outside stressors contribute to those two things can really get someone thinking, I wonder if suicide's the option.
Yeah, we're talking with Laura Frey, who's an assistant professor at the Kent School of Social Work, and you're also a certified family training. What is it? Family therapist and suicide risk prevention, or something?
So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist,
Okay.
but I specialize in suicide communication with families.
Okay, suicide communication. Well, that brings me to my next question. So how do you know what the right thing to say is? Person says, I am having these thoughts. They admit to you. What do you do?
So honestly, give them space to talk about it and say, help me understand. I want to understand what you're going through. A lot of times people are worried about saying the wrong thing, and really silence is mainly the wrong option. If you ask questions, and I tell families all the time, it's okay to say, I don't know what that's like, but I want to understand. Can you share with me what you're feeling? Or even sometimes saying, I don't know what to do here, but let's call somebody together and figure it out. And then calling a crisis line, calling your primary care doctor, calling the ER if you have to, just to get that answer together.
Do folks who are in that type of, potentially depression or thinking suicidal thoughts, do they feel like if you call the ER or you call a doctor or you call a psychologist or somebody or someone like you, is that some sort of violation of their privacy? Do they sometimes retract and say, I can't trust you? I told you my deepest thoughts and I can't trust you. Does that sometimes happen?
Well, and so certainly I think sometimes if you're sharing with somebody and they absolutely don't want you to call and you call anyways, maybe they'll have that thought.
Right.
But most of the time, people don't want to be feeling that way. It's not a good way to feel. It's an awful way to feel. And so having somebody talk with them and say, I'm worried about you. Let's call together. I'm not just going to send you off and leave you alone to fend for yourself. Let's go together. Let's see what we can find out. Most people want that help because they don't want to feel that way anymore. So I would say to go ahead and call. And if you're truly worried about somebody and they're still not wanting to go, you can talk with them and say, I'm uncomfortable with this. I would like to call somebody. And you can even call a crisis line yourself and say, I just want to know what my options are. How can I be helpful in this situation?
Again, September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month across the country, and Laura Frey is one of the folks at the Kent School of Social Work who's working with these folks. And you have, again, I keep calling it a conference, a training session for professionals coming up here in a couple days. So, again, give the details of that, and if someone's interested to come, how should they track you down and get registered?
Sure, yeah. So the training is September 26th to the 28th. It's 3 days. You can do all 3 days, or you can just do the first day. It's happening at the UofL Shelby campus, so it's just here locally in town.
Laura Frey, it's always great talking to you. You do great research as well, so I appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for listening to UofL Today.